Cape Town's disaster risk management officials were put to the test after the first winter storm left parts of the city without power and others battling with flooding. Now, the inclement weather sweeping through the city signals the start of difficult times ahead for shack dwellers in many sprawling informal settlements across the city. Now, the city says the rise in the number of sewage and stormwater blockages is due to illegal dumping and appealed to residents not to throw their waste into drains. Roads in parts of the city's southern suburbs and the Cape Flats have also been damaged. MMC for Community Safety in the city of Cape Town, JP Smith, joins us now via Skype line for a bit more insight into this. Alderman Smith, thanks very much for your time and welcome to the AM report. Perhaps as a start, let's take stock of what's happened so far. Give us an idea of the extent of the impact that the past couple of days weather has had on the municipality.
Absolutely. Good morning. 3 days of very heavy rain. And I mean, when it rains this heavily, the ground just can't soak up the amount of water, especially where people have built in areas that were not planned as formal settlements, and where you can't do stormwater systems properly underground because you have to remove the entire all the structures before you can do that. So you can only retrofit afterwards. Stormwater interventions, disaster management, and the different departments like roads have worked on that for the last year. And so we have around 29 areas that flooded in the last year and the year before, where we saw only minimal flooding yesterday. And the day before, I was out at several of these areas. So the situation is significantly improved in some of them. But absolutely, you've still got localized intersections and areas where it's so close to wetlands and inside wetlands and low-lying that it's not possible to fix. I stood on site with the roads officials. There just aren't easy fixes. But that said, with this much rain, 55 millimeters and more, we had areas in Overcome Heights, Paula Park, Goliath Estate, Langa, Masipumalele, and Khayelitsha and Philippi that were affected. We had to pump out some water. We'll take some millings and put down to make access to vehicles easy. We had trees that were felled, and we had some electrical outages, and our staff worked around the clock to deal with it. Just on around 700, or close on 700 calls relating flooding and weather-related matters over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and of course, you know, in the backdrop, there's still this issue of this health crisis going on with the coronavirus pandemic. It does raise questions around what the plan might be, especially for some of those areas that you've just spoken about that are prone to this flooding. What's the strategy from the city of Cape Town to at least alleviate the impact that this is likely to have on the many residents in those areas?
So, I mean, at the moment, you do remediating measures now.
Yeah.
You potentially provide halls if people ask for that, if they get enough water to make using their homes impossible. Nobody has asked for that. It hasn't been requested. But the facilities are available. And for the rest of it, you pump out water and remove. The long-term challenge, though, is really what one must face up to here, and that means dealing with the areas where you've got habitual flooding. So in many of these areas, that list would have been some ways longer. And I mean, for instance, an area like BM section that I visited yesterday in Khayelitsha, which in the past you couldn't even get into, all the access roads were flooded. Those access roads are free and clear yesterday. We used them. It's only once you start walking between structures further down that you have pools of water. So the interventions we've done over the last 5 years, headed by the Winter Readiness Task Team under disaster management, have definitely had positive results.
Yeah, I mean, it also just does raise a much broader structural issue around spatial planning, doesn't it? Take us through the thoughts that are taking place to get that aspect of the issue sorted out. It's been ongoing for a long time. The city of Cape Town has been at the center of very heated debates around exactly this, you know, demolition of structures, the treatment of homeless people, etc., etc. Surely this is a moment, once again, to hone in on those things and try to find sustainable solutions.
Absolutely. So that's why housing delivery is so important, and that communities must work with us. Just back to the flooding issue for a moment. We had EPWP staff in the run-up to the rains, which were anticipated, cleaning out the canals and stormwater areas. And in Langa, the group of EPWP workers who were there said to me that the canal they perfectly cleaned 2 weeks ago is dumped up to the level again. And so part of it is community behavior. There are 2 skips close by that people were not using. So we just plead with communities also to do their part, make sure that we don't obstruct these waterways. And absolutely, it is about formal housing delivery to make sure that you have areas where the stormwater can handle. But even in formal areas, we've seen people with enough dumping block up sewage systems and drains to require the roads department to go out and clear these. But yeah, that's an ongoing challenge. We have a winter readiness program at the moment. There are hundreds of homeless people who during summer might choose to be on the street, who at the moment are inside homeless shelters because the city provides significant additional budget at this time and mattresses and toiletries and additional money for shelters to expand their bed space. And in fact, out of the lockdown, one of the positive outcomes is that we have permanently expanded our shelter bed space. When we closed down the Strandfontein shelter, that led to the expansion of almost 400 bed spaces across the city. So that's one positive outcome, and we're working on even additional facilities. The final touches are being done to a big expansion of one of the safe spaces in Culemborg, right in the city center, which will accommodate a further 240 homeless people. So there are positive outcomes out of these crises that one faces if you respond to them correctly.
Yeah, and one certainly hopes that will be the case in the city of Cape Town. Let's stay on that theme, right? The Western Cape had been battled by severe droughts over the recent history as well. I imagine this type of weather might be able to alleviate that problem. Do you have an update on what the dam levels are at least looking like at this stage, given the past 3 days?
No, I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. I've been ankle deep or knee deep in mud and flood water for the last 2 days. So the dam levels is not something I'm watching. I'm sure some of my other colleagues are watching that very carefully. But yes, we're never allowed to say no to rain anymore. We just wish it would fall a little bit slower, not all at the same time, because that's what causes the problem. But yes, the water is critical. Cape Town fended off a very nasty drought, the worst recorded one in about 100 years. And we didn't end up with water shortages or having to tank in water or otherwise. There were municipalities across South Africa who could not cope with that challenge. We managed to fend it off, but at great cost and with great challenge. One of the positive outcomes of that, for instance, was the ability to rapidly move water tankers around. So I think we've installed 240 water tankers in flood and in vulnerable communities over these last few weeks as part of this coronavirus in informal settlements, so that people have higher levels of access to water for hygiene and other purposes.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time and getting us into the picture. We'll touch base with you once again to see how particularly vulnerable communities are faring, as of course I anticipate this type of weather conditions are likely to be with us for quite some time. JP Smith there is with the city of Cape Town.